Another competitor has entered the fray, which is absolutely great news for all of us. And I'm talking about the very competitive subcompact crossover category. Now in that category, you've got the likes of the MG ZS, the GD Coolray, and of course the Ford Territory. All have their strengths and weaknesses that we've pointed out in the videos of the past, which you actually can revisit at any time that you want. Today's competitor comes in the form of a 2022 Chevrolet Tracker LT Redline. We'll take a closer look at the tech in this automobile, the features inside and out, engine performance and efficiency, and what it's like to drive to see if this crossover has the chops to take on the established names. Or if it loses track of the competition. Ah? Do you need help purchasing your car insurance? Head on over to AutoDeal.com.ph/car-insurance. Here, you can compare prices and customize your insurance coverage from many of the Philippines' top providers. When you've selected the insurance that's best for you, simply fill out the application and complete the transaction with ease through Visa, MasterCard, GCash, GrabPay, or PayPal, and receive your policy within the next business day. Get the best deal on insurance with AutoDeal. Now, when you're considering buying an automobile, price is always going to be a very large factor. So let's get that out of the way. The Chevrolet Tracker, this 2022 model, is available at 1,124,888 Philippine pesos. Now that's for the lower variant. This top of the line variant, this LT Redline, is 1,242,888 Philippine pesos. Now that is for the top of the line, and when you compare it to other top of the line models out there, its closest rivals would be the MG ZS Alpha, which comes in at 1,158,888 Philippine pesos. The GD Coolray Sport is at 1,218,000 Philippine pesos, and the VW T-Cross SE at 1,198,000 Philippine pesos. Oh, and lest I forget, of course, the Ford Territory Titanium, which is at 1,310,000 Philippine pesos. Now, at its price point, it sits at the more expensive side of the spectrum. Unfortunately, just because something's expensive doesn't necessarily mean it's always better. I will, however, tell you that if you head on over to AutoDeal.com.ph like immediately, you'll find that there are promos available on the Chevrolet Tracker for cash buyers up to 30,000 pesos off. But back to the car. Now, one of its largest selling points, I feel, is how the car actually looks. And if you take a look at the front clip, it kind of reminds me of a Camaro, just a little bit shrunken down, like if you were to put it inside a dryer, and of course in crossover form. Look closely, you'll see it. You get LEDs up front housed in a very aggressive shaped headlight. A huge vent that, well, isn't all vent actually all around. A black grille with red accents unique to the Redline, along with other details around the car. My favorite being this red stripe on the black 17-inch alloys. And you'll also notice that all the bow ties are in black. You also get 161 millimeters of ground clearance and disc brakes front and at the rear. And also, what I'd like to add about the side profile is that it is extremely unique in the sense that these creases on the door, yeah, you see this pattern quite often, but the fact that it then comes up again over the wheel wells up front, it just makes it look so different, as do too the roof rails up on top. There is also one other thing I'd like to point out that I've already made mention earlier, which are the red accents that can be found all around the automobile. I absolutely love them because it just gives you a little and then takes it right back. Sort of like a movie in the 50s of the 19 kopong-kopos and no sé qué whats. It's not like the movies of today where, good grief, it shows the nudity and whatnot, and I have to cover my own eyes and ears, and I'm a father of two. But imagine this to be sort of like a tease, so to speak, with the red. It gives a little, and then it takes it right back. It gives a little more, and then it takes it right back. Huh? You put your left foot in, no, I took it too far. Damn it. Now at the rear, it actually looks just your basic, average, run-of-the-mill rear for a crossover. You got your LED taillights, and then the most exciting part would be the red accents found on the tracker badge right here, which I gotta admit looks good. But other than that, it just looks average, really. And it's so sad because the front clip looks absolutely great. Like I said, it looks like a Camaro. It's like Chevy said, okay na tayo sa harap, quota na tayo. Which they're right because it looks darn good, but I wish they did just a little bit something more special here to, you know, match the front. Now, when you open her up, you're looking at about 390 liters of space. Just a wee bit more when you take out the tonneau. Jack, if you would please. Then there's also the fact that you could lose a little bit more space by moving this bottom up to its elevated position. You lose, I'm assuming, roughly about 5 liters of space at most, but then again, it makes loading heavier stuff a heck of a lot easier because this is now much higher. Then you're gonna put yourself at about 1,300 liters of space, or a little bit more when you fold the second row. That's actually easier than what it looks like. I just had a hard time because, well, I'm short, so. Now in the back, you definitely have room for 2 adults. Putting a third in here might be a bit of a tight squeeze, but for 2 people, no problem. Elbow room is good, leg room is good. That is my normal driving position. Headroom is actually pretty decent, even for those that are much taller than me. There aren't a lot of toys or tech back here. You've only got your center armrest with 2 cup holders, bottle holders on either door, speakers, and 2 USB charging points. No air vents for the passengers back here, but if it does start to feel a little cramped, there is a panoramic sunroof that you can share with the front 2 passengers. However, that's great for when it's rainy season. Maybe not so great during summer. Up front, another feature that the Redline has is what Chevy calls sport seats. Now, I don't know about you, but they're not as sporty as one might think. They're actually pretty comfortable more than anything else. They are powered, however, but you can only move it forward and back, up and down. The rest at the back is still operated manually, which I find that kind of odd. Now, the steering wheel itself is wrapped in actually pretty good material. I wouldn't call it 100% genuine leather, but it feels good to the touch nonetheless. Now, the only complaint that I have on the steering are the stitchings found here on the inside. It's a bit rough to the touch, unlike those found on the seat and on the dash. Well, this one's a little bit rough, but not as rough as here on the steering wheel, which is odd because, well, to be honest with you, you're going to be spending 99% of your time holding onto this thing while you're inside the automobile. So I just wish that was soft to the touch. I will say, however, that there are audio controls on the steering wheel, which is nice, and a trip computer in the center flanked by 2 analog gauges, which you can control with the buttons here on the stock, which is kind of a hard thing to use, but you'll eventually get used to it. Then there's also the 8-inch touchscreen infotainment screen, which doubles as your reverse camera. Now, great news for all of you that have Apple phones because it has Apple CarPlay. Unfortunately, for people like myself, an Android user, there is no Android Auto, which is kind of sad. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I get the fact that the dash is sort of like tilted a little bit to the driver. Yeah, I get that because it's more driver-centric, so to speak. But the weird thing is that the screen is also tilted, and not just tilted to the left and to the driver, but it's also tilted a little bit too high up. Now, some of you wise asses out there are probably saying, I'm just too short and that's why the glare is working on. I tried it from a higher perspective and there's still glare. Now, that's obviously with the sunroof open, but still, I'm just saying that the position is just a little bit odd. It's not a deal breaker. It's not gonna, make you run to the dealership and say, take my money back. No, not at all. It's just, well, it's a quirk, really. The screen itself, however, well, it's sharp and the colors are good. Touch inputs are responsive, and so far in our testing, we never really ran into any issues with it. The dashboard design is pretty nice. Like I mentioned, you got the red contrast stitching on what you'd think is soft leather, but it kind of really isn't. But then again, who really pokes on dashboards regularly? There is one other quirk I'd like to mention about this automobile, and it's how you lock the car. It's not found here, and it's also not found on the passenger door. It's found here in the center. Now, I find that an odd place to put it, and I do understand that you put the hazard light there so that you both, the front passenger and yourself, can reach to it. But at the door locking mechanism, why can't the passengers in the back simply open their own doors? Why do you have to unlock it from up here? And then the other thing is that if you want to get something from the back, instead of just opening your door, and if you're outside already, just pushing a button here, you got to climb in and then press the button inside. Again, it's not a deal breaker, it's just, well, it's just kind of odd, don't you think? You know what's a deal breaker, though? If you don't subscribe to our channel, because you're absolutely going to break our hearts. Oh, and give us a like too. Truth be told, it drives like any other crossover really. It's not exactly going to blow your skirt up or anything like that. The steering is actually pretty light, and then you've got the confidence that there's a little bit more ground clearance even in this car that has car-like characteristics. Although I wouldn't exactly drive it off the beaten path even though you've got that ground clearance, simply because, well, it's a front wheel drive. So you need to be a bit careful with that. NVH is, well, I'm not going to say good, I'm not going to say bad, I'm just going to say decent, perhaps even average. The road noise is kept down a bit. Wind noise also kept down a bit. It's not as if that you're going to be screaming at each other inside the cabin. No, not like a one-cylinder engine that's driving on the highway at like 150 kilometers per hour. No, nothing like that. And trust me, we've experienced that. But here, there's a slight echo inside the cabin done by my voice and that of the wheel noise that are coming inside. But other than that, it's somewhat tame, really. The best way to describe it is that, like I mentioned, you're not going to be screaming at each other in here. And sadly, even if you put the kids in the back, you still will be able to hear them. At the heart of this tracker is a 1-liter 3-cylinder turbo that produces 116 horses and 175 newton meters of torque, made it to a 6-speed automatic transmission. Now, I gotta tell you, it may not sound much, it obviously looks better on paper, but when you step on the accelerator, there is a bit of a pep to it. There is a bite. It's not as smooth as with other crossovers out there, so it does kind of give you that sporty feel, even though the automobile isn't really all that sporty on its own. But there is that bite. Now, the bite is fun when you want to floor it and you're trying to gain speed immediately, which you can. 30 kilometers per hour to 100 kilometers per hour like that in a snap. Obviously, I've only tried it with just me and Jack inside the automobile. But in other cases, when you're stuck in traffic, that might be a bit of an issue, because then you will need to get used to the throttle response, which is actually pretty immediate. What is a bit of a disappointment, not exactly a letdown, just a bit of a disappointment, is how the car responds when you put it in sport mode or in manual mode. See, first off, you don't have paddles on the steering wheel. That's one. Second, you have a button, not even a plus minus up and down on the shifter. So you're relegated to buttons. And then when you do finally use it, well, it's a little bit on the slow side. I might even say sluggish. It's just really not as responsive. Thankfully enough, though, that when you are in automatic mode, that the car works absolutely perfect. So, funny thing, we're pulling out of a gasoline station right now because, well, we needed fuel. The beauty about it is that we don't need a lot of fuel, only because that this peppy 3-cylinder turbo gets about 10 kilometers per liter inside the city, which is great. Unfortunately, for the gas prices that we have today, I decided to load this thing with 640 pesos of fuel, and that still wasn't even 10 liters of fuel. Good grief! Who knew that dinosaur blood would be so expensive? In contrast, that 10 kilometers per liter is actually pretty darn good, because the same 3-cylinder turbocharged engine is found in a Geely Cool Ray. It's not exactly the same engine, but you know where I'm getting at. And that engine on that car roughly does about 7.5 to 8 kilometers per liter. So really, this is actually not bad. Considering the fact that how bad gasoline prices are, hey man, that's darn good. I've made mention of this in the past before, but if I could trade in certain aspects of an automobile for other types of tech, I would. Like for instance, in this car, it rings true that I wish I could trade in the auto start stop function for cruise control, because I will argue that I will use cruise control more often than I would the auto start stop function. But again, that's just me. The ride quality of the tracker is, well, I gotta say, it's just about par, and par with that of subcompact sedan. That's not necessarily a bad thing. See, you get those types of automobiles because you get it for the ride quality. And true enough, this thing has that ride quality, and yet has ground clearance. It's got about 40 millimeters more of ground clearance, which gives you a little bit more confidence, well, when the city starts flooding in during the rainy season. And unfortunately, because of global warming, that's actually where we are right now, even though it's October. Isn't that strange? In fact, what we wanted to do was get either a bottle of water or maybe a cup of water and hold on to it while we drive on EDSA, which is where we are now, to show you just exactly how bouncy and or smooth the car is. But to be honest with you, we decided to cut that whole thing out because we figured it to be pointless because, well, it's actually pretty smooth, pretty okay, and pretty standard. You're not going to get the jarring that you might think that you would get from, let's say, a pickup truck. No, not at all. You're not going to get that from this automobile. So, like I said, pretty standard. You're not going to be bouncing around. And it feels like a good, safe car in general. It really does. There are a couple of things that catch me off guard. For instance, the amount of plastics that are found inside the automobile and the fact that, well, the sport transmission mode of the car is nothing spectacular. There is a highlight to that in the sense that, well, the amount of plastics inside just basically means it's a heck of a lot easier to clean, and it's also lighter for the automobile. And then the transmission. To be honest with you, you're not necessarily going to be sporty with a 3-cylinder vehicle, so you might as well stick to automatic. There is one thing though that I have a hard time forgiving, which is the fact that this particular crossover doesn't have cruise control. That for me kind of hurts my feelings because, well, I do enjoy cruise control on long drives. That being said, I gotta say that there are some highlights of the automobile too, such as that, like I mentioned, the 3-cylinder engine, which is turbocharged, by the way, and it's extremely peppy and fuel efficient at the same time. And then the fact that, well, the car absolutely looks great. Not just the front clip, which, like I say again, kind of resembles a Camaro, and the fact that it's quite unique in the market, but also the red accents found all over the automobile, which gives a little and then takes it right back. The beauty about it here is that you yourself have the choice, because we've reviewed the other crossovers in this particular segment, and our reviews can be found on AutoDeal.com.ph and or our YouTube channel. Our videos will make sure that you don't lose track of anything. Ha!